Thank you so much for tuning into this video. In this one, I'm going to discuss a brand new study technique, one that I learned from Pete Cariter's Clarke. It's called double studying your hands. And make sure you stick around to the end of the video because I have a special gift waiting for you. Alrighty, so let's get to double studying our hands. This is something that Peter Clarke mentioned in podcast episode number 211. He just kind of said it in passing, but as soon as he said it, I realized, holy cow, that is such a great way to study your hands and to learn from prior hands played. So the purpose of double studying your hands is to see how your knowledge has developed through your studies and your play. We have a leak to plug. For example, we're making terrible preflop 2-bet calls. So we filter in the database for that. We look at some hands, try to learn from our mistakes, and try to fix those mistakes. Well, double studying hands is a way to really just check that you are learning what you should be learning, that your skills are improving, your knowledge is improving. So step one in this process is to create a specific hand tag. For example, you would call your tag the leak 2-bet call tag if that's what you're trying to work on, right? So let me show you what that looks like. When you go to Poker Tracker 4, go up to Configure and then Tags, and you're just going to add a new tag. Give it a hashtag leak 2-bet call. The reason for the hashtag is because everything pops up here alphabetically, and if I'm going to be using this a lot right now, I'll give the hashtag so it's at the top of my list, so I don't have to scroll down and try to find it, you know. Great, so now we have that tag in place for us. Next step, filter and review 10 related hands. So I already have my call preflop 2-bet filter. So filter for it and then look for some hands where I lost some money making calls. And the first one obviously that stands out, but bam, pocket sevens right here, calling on the button. Doesn't seem like a bad play, but let's dive into the hand to figure out what happened. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start reviewing the hand from, preflop all the way through the streets. Now, as you're reviewing hands, you don't want to just look at the hand, go through the streets, look at your mistakes, but not do anything with that information. If I made a bad call here pre-flop, am I going to really remember it the next time I'm playing a session or 2 weeks from now? No, I'm not. The way you learn from hands is by first reviewing the hands, of course. The second is by taking notes. And so that's what this Excel spreadsheet is all about. Instructions are on tab 1. Tab 2 is the call 2-bet hands. Of course, you can, as you're using a sheet like this, create a copy, move it to the end, and, we could do a new one. Call 3-bet hands, and then 10 more hands all about calling 3-bets. But this is the calling 2-bet one, and you can see I have space for 10 different hands here to review. Now, as you're reviewing hands, I'm going to show you right now the information to put in. But basically, you're going to make your initial review in the white cells, and then your second review, when you double study the hands, you're going to put that information in the green cells right there. So let's take a look at this hand here. As we're going, Weird Wizard opens up. Look at that. We only have 5 hands, relatively unknown player who's making a full pot size raised. And we're playing 25 NL, and he has over 200 big blinds. This guy is making some money. Maybe he's loose aggressive. Maybe he's just getting lucky. We don't know anything about him really. Folds around to us, and we call with sevens. Okay. And then they fold right there. We get a flop. So before that happens, let's take notes on what's going on in this hand. And I've already actually taken the notes. Just got to put them in black now. Pocket sevens on the button. Nice and simple. Villain, position, and type. Well, Weird Wizard is his name. MP, he's opening from the MP, as you can see. It's under the gun, +1, but we're so close to the button with 2 players missing, it's MP/EP. Also, he's an unknown. I only have 5 hands on the guy. I don't know squat about him. So I should be playing against him as if he was like your standard average player at 25 NL stakes. That's how I should be approaching him, right? So right here, I called to set mine, and it seems like a reasonable call. Maybe the first time I'm reviewing this hand ever. I think, yeah, it seems like a reasonable call. I have 20x implied odds. To call 85 cents, I want to be able to win at least 17 behind. And he has 62. I have 2380. Great. Seems like a reasonable call right here. So let's continue on in the hand. Flop comes King, Queen, Jack, which is really interesting. One of the reasons I picked this hand was because this is the kind of board that Pete Clarke was talking about in episode 11. So some of those things that we learned from that episode and from his GTO studies may apply to this hand here. So he checks. Great. He showed a little bit of weakness, so I come out for the probe bet. Not for the probe, the float bet, I mean to say. And he calls. Kind of a bummer. We wanted a fold, but it happens. So, before that happens, let's see what are our notes here on the flop. The villain shows weakness when he checked, so I floated. And I think that's a good play. Making the float bet right there is totally fine. As we know from the episode 211, Peter Clarke talked about the fact that these kinds of boards are hard to hit. They're not hard to hit. When people check them, they're often totally whiffed, right? He could have a random ace 5 suited, which didn't flop any kind of a draw. He could have pocket 8s here or pocket 7s like me, and he's just going to check fold a lot of his range on this kind of board, right? So me making the bet, totally fine, because people aren't betting and bluffing on this board enough of the time. So I think that's a fine play. 3 of spades comes. He checks again. And then we throw out the 2/3 pot bet. 66%. The first on the flop was about 60%. So we increased our bet a little bit in order to try to get him to fold. We want him to fold right here. Damn it. He called our bet. So let's see what my notes are on this turn. The 3 of spades doesn't change anything. No draws completed. So I double barrel bluffed right there, which isn't a bad play at all. Like, a 10, an ace, a heart did not come in, nor did like another king to give him trips, nor a queen or a jack to give him some kind of trips hand that he could have called with on the flop. 3 of spades, pretty inconsequential. The double barrel bluff's not bad at all in this instance. The 2 of clubs comes. He checks. We bet 8 bones, so we've increased our bet even more, 60, 66%, and then now somewhere shy of 80%, 77% maybe, I'm not exactly sure. We increase it, we're hoping for that fold, and then he check calls, of course. What a bummer. Let's see what's the end. Well, before we see what he had, let me see what my notes are on the river. I should have realized that he likes his hand because he's called 2 streets of increasing bet sizes so far. And a fold is in order versus 2 streets of calling 2/3 pot. So I bet big on both streets. He should have folded if he had pocket 7s, pocket 4s, ace 5 offsuit kind of a thing. He probably should have folded those, but he didn't. So the fact that he didn't fold 2 streets means I should have just checked behind on this river, hoping he had a random ace high hand, or even a 10 for an open ender, and my pocket 7s could win, But I made the triple barrel bluff, and he called with king queen. Of course, he's never folding there. I guess the board's maybe scary. He thinks I could have called with pocket jacks or ace 10, so he's not taking his chances. I don't know why he didn't check raise at any point to try to get it in. I mean, if he's willing to call, if he thinks he's good, he could have easily check raised that river, got my final 12 bucks in, All right. So those are all my notes from my first review of this hand. Let's go back to the instructions here. Tag each hand you study. Great. We'll whip out this bad boy, leak 2-bet call, tag it right there. So from now on, in the future when we want to find this hand again, super simple. We just pull up the tag. Let me show you how that works. Down here, no tag selected, leak 2-bet call. Once we select that, bam, that one hand comes up. All of these other hands in the other positions, they're not coming up because they weren't tagged. So that's the next step right there. Tag each hand you study. And now what you're going to do is go off the felt. You're going to go away from this. Now you're going to pull up some things in Google, maybe a YouTube video, an article, a chapter from a book, and you're going to start studying. And not only are you going to study, you're going to practice with purpose. So if you're studying making better 2-bet calls, do a Google search on 2-bet calls, find some ranges to use, practice using those ranges. Every session that you play should be geared towards making better 2-bet calls and not making these mistakes again. And then once you feel that you've done enough study and enough play, go back and now review the 10 hands. So double study the tagged hands, look for details missed, and add them to your notes. So let's say, we ran this filter again after doing studying and playing. We found this hand once again that we studied before. We already have it open. Let's have it open. And now let's review it from the start with our newfound knowledge because of all of our study and play. He opened the pot. Okay, we called. And a couple of folds here. Cool beans. Let's see here. Okay, so here's my new notes after a second review, because maybe I learned a little bit more and I'm noticing more things about this. He's an unknown and it's a big bet. He made a full pot sized open. Implied odds of 20x are there, but how sure am I that I can earn it? I'm not sure at all, so a fold is reasonable. And here's another thing, a possible big blind 3-better. Right here, he's got a big stack. He's a tight aggressive player. He could use this opportunity to come over the top with a little 3-bet over us, possibly, as a bluff or going for value. Not exactly sure. Let's see what his stats are when they pop up. And we can see he's at 10.5 3-bet, which is 2 out of 19, which isn't high, but it's at a minimum, it's a concern, something that we should at least think about before we call, giving him a good 3-betting opportunity there. So that's the pre-flop notes that we made on the second review. Now for the flop, same exact flop. He checks, we bet. He calls. Let's see what notes I made now. Oh, nothing on the flop. That's right. Because everything seems good. I'm totally down with this float bet. The sizing is good too, right? At 60%. I'm good with it. If he had pocket 4s, if he had ace-5 offsuit, he might call. But pocket 4s, pocket 7s, they're folding as well. Or suited connectors. 5-6 suited, 6-7 suited. If they aren't hearts or spades, folding as well. So let's take a look at the turn. He checks again. We bet. He calls. Whoops. Before we get there, what are my new turn notes here? He called on a very wet flop. 3 of spades only adds draws. If he was good on the flop, he's still good. I should have checked behind because I don't know how turn honest he is. So that goes to the earlier mention of him just being an unknown player. I don't know what kind of, or how he approaches his flops, his turns, his rivers. So he might not be a good guy to be double barreling against, especially when it's going to cost us $3 or even more to get him to fold here. That's not saying it's a bad play to make, but it is something to be cognizant of, something that upon second viewing, I noticed those details, The 2 of clubs comes, $8, he calls, and we're boned. What are my notes on this one? The bluff is okay, but it's too big. If he's folding a whiffed draw to $8, he's also folding to $6 as well. So if he had a couple of hearts that didn't hit, or a random ace-X hand that had that 10 for a gut shot, he's folding to $6 as well as 8. His big stack might make him more okay with calling. And you've seen this plenty of times, and you've probably done this yourself. Once you develop that big stack, you're more willing to take some risks because sometimes you kind of feel like you're playing with house money. So you're making potentially bad calls because, you just want a full stack off of this guy right here. I'll put those chips to good use, So that's how double studying works. When you do this for the first, you just go on to the second hand and so on. And like I said, the purpose was to see if your knowledge, if your skills, if your strategies are improving, and if you're noticing more things about the hands. And you might even go through and catch way more mistakes. You might even go through a thing that you thought was a mistake before. You figure out now, hold on a second, the math was right. That was a good play. I'm glad I made it. So by double studying, maybe you're also correcting some of your or not maybe, you're probably correcting a lot of misapplications or ill-conceived ideas from your prior studying round. Now, I said at the beginning to stick around because I have something special for you. And what it is, I'm going to have this spreadsheet for you to download. All you have to do is go to smartpokerstudy.com/YouTube gift. When you go there, sign up for the mailing list, for the weekly boost mailing list, and by doing that, you get exclusive poker strategy content delivered directly to your inbox every single week. And then once you do that, you're going to have access to this spreadsheet. Of course, spreadsheets are easy to make. You can just copy this and create it for yourself. But if you have my spreadsheet, that's just going to save you a little bit of time, and then you can get to double studying right meow. So thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. If you learned something and you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, ding the bell to receive notifications, all that jazz. Thank you very much.